houseplant propagation today. And so one of the key things with houseplant propagation is because some are succulents and some are quite soft, we want to make sure our compost is in good condition and it's very well drained. One of the biggest killers of when you do houseplant propagation is that they rot off. And so what you've got to do really is to get some sand, some grit, some perlite or whatever you can in there to make it better. So what we're going to do, we're going to take just one pot of, I'm just using wash sand actually, so that's concreting or sharp sand, not building sand because that's got additives. So you can use a little bit of sharp sand, and I'm just going to use the same amount, so it's a 50-50 mix, sort of a peaty bark kind of sand mix. And then what I'm going to do is just whisk that up, okay? And what you're looking for is a nice uniform colour in the mix, okay? So just keep mixing it with your hands until you've got a very uniform colour. Okay, so I'm just doing that, and it's beginning to get there. You can see it's getting more uniform. I haven't got there's one or two little lumps of sand there, so hopefully that's that all nice and mixed up. Little test if you want to, hold it together. If it holds together and touch breaks up, just right. Okay, so I'm going to use that. It's going to be when I put my debris. And what we're going to do is kind of use a tile. So we're going to do some peperomia caparata. This is a nice lovely purple form that we're going to do, and you can use any of the peperomias that we've got today. So even that one, the little fireworky one, is okay. I'm going to prepare my trays. So check your tray to make sure there's got no cracks or splits in it. Okay, so we're going to use just a 6-module tray, and then we're just going to literally overfill that. So pop your hands in, overfill it, okay, and just sort of level off. Tiny, no real press, but just sort of checking to make sure there's no air pockets as normal. I'm going to do that one, and I'm actually going to do my other tray, which we're going to use for what we call leaf lamina cuttings. So we're going to do leaf petiole cuttings, we're going to do leaf lamina, and we'll have a quick look at some of the other methods of propagation. So again, we'll just fill the tray, overfill it, just like we did when we did seed sowing, and just press that to one side, and then just screed off, spin that round, and you can either use a presser board, or if you've got your tile, you can improvise, pop your tile in, and just a light press in there like that, and then just a light press in there like that. So that's enough there just to, I've got my 2 sort of trays prepared. Have a little bit of a tidy up. We're going to take fully expanded leaves where we possibly can. So you want your biggest ones. This is a very small plant. Normally we've got bigger plants, but we've got some tiny plants this year. So what I'm looking for is the biggest ones. So why fully expanded? Why do we go for fully expanded leaves? Okay, so I'm doing anybody? It's all to do with the energy, and obviously if they aren't fully expanded, the plant is going to try to expand out to make it a full expander. We want it to root. So we want all the energy to go into rooting. It's a bit like when we take flowers off the plant. If we remove the flowers, it'll put more energy into rooting. So I'm really looking for the biggest ones, and these are getting a little bit on the small side, but and what I'm doing, I'm cutting as low as possible to leave the plant in good condition. Okay, so that's quite important, that we don't just chop off high and the stem rots back. So I've got my 6, pop that to one side, and then I'm going to use this as my rubbish bin, if you like, my waste bin, and I'm just going to come down about 1 inch, 25 mil, and I'm just going to cut them one, lay it on top of the compost, and we'll just do that. If there's a label, I think there's some, oh, it might be up here actually, I think there's some labels. That one's okay. And we'll just do that. And peperomia, actually, you can even root it in water, and you can even root it by removing the petiole. So I've got my 6, just use a label, pop it in, just so it doesn't damage the petiole, and just a slight firm, nice, and just pop them in. Okay, and there we go. And that is basically for the first. And then what we've got here is we've got some begonias. Now, normally begonia rex, and we have some quite big leaves, and you can do a lot with them, but these are not the biggest. But you could do leaf petioles with these. You could actually just do exactly the same. But we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do leaf lamina. And so you choose your biggest leaves. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my tile. I'm going to flatten that out on the tile, and I'm going to cut across the lamina. The lamina is just the veins of the leaf. And I'm just going to cut round that, and I'm going to trim quite low. Okay, I'm going to trim that. And I'm going to put that one in the middle. We're going to do a few different methods with this one. So I'm going to put that in the middle and lay it flat. Then what I'm going to do, I've got a little bit of pea gravel. Could use some horticultural grit. And this is just going to hold it down, just so it's in contact with the soil, so it'll probably root a little bit better. So just a few little bits of pea gravel just to hold that in place. That's one. I'm then going to do another method, which is sort of like the, I call it the postage stamp method. And these, as I say, are not the biggest. But anyway, we'll use what we got. And I'm just going to cut that off there. And what I'm going to do now is cut this so it's a bit neater, making note of where the top is and where the bottom is. And so what we do is we're just going to cut down a bit neater even, and chop across there, chop up there, so that removes those, and a little bit across the bottom. So I've kind of got a rectangle with a bit missing at the top there. And then I'm going to cut across here. And actually, I'm only going to get two out of this because that's a bit ragged. I'm going to cut down this. So I've got my two stamps. And I'm still got them. That's the top, that's the bottom. But just so I don't forget, I'm going to put a little chevron just here. Okay, just so I don't forget, well, that is the top. Okay, so I'm planting them the right way up. Always a good thing to plant up the right way up. So I put a little notch or a little chevron in the top there. And what I'm going to do with those two is I'm going to kind of put one in there like that. Oops, just make a little bit more of a slot. Drop them in. Okay, and that's it. I can edit that out, don't I? And then, so there's two. And then I'll do another leaf and do another two there. So that's, you've got your chevron type. And then, so do another two there, and then just finally, just do a leaf petiole as an experiment to see which ones root the best. It's always good to experiment, and so all I want you to do with the last one is something like that. Just pop it in the side, and we'll do that, and then you've got a nice little tray. Then you're going to label it. We'll just do begonia rex on these. Put the date, put your name on the back, and so you can identify what it is. Okay. Now this is the money tree. Crassula obliqua, and it is a great plant. In fact, we met, I was on holiday in Madeira and met someone on holiday, and this lady said that she'd paid for a holiday by propagating the money tree. So it really is a money tree. And what's great about it is that you can take a leaf like this, chop it off, and you can put it in your compost, either directly, or you can leave it dry out for a week, okay, until it calluses over, which you do that with most of your cacti and succulents. You let it kind of dry and callus over, put it in the compost, and that will produce a new plant. Okay, again, make sure your compost is free draining. So that's the money tree. So I could leave it over here on a bit of a tray just to dry out. I've got a few other things there that are just drying. They might even produce roots in the air, sometimes they do. So you've got that kind of propagation. You've got obviously the spider plant kind of system, where you've got a runner or a stolon, and you can put that in some compost, and you can leave it attached to the mother, and when it roots you can cut it off, or if you want to you can cut it and root it. So that's sort of your spider plant. With your streptocarpus, what you can do is you can cut a leaf off the streptocarpus. There's a couple of ways of doing this one. You can cut the midrib out So you can actually just literally cut along there and put that in your compost, just about half and half, and that will root little baby streptocarpus along it. So you can do it that way, or another way you can do streptocarpus, check that you haven't got any pests and diseases on the leaf really, is you can just chop the top and bottom like that, and then you do your chevrons again. So you go like that, get rid of that one, cut flat. So that's going to be a chevron, and you can put it in. You can, if you want to, chevron it all the way down. So I could do that. Okay, get rid of that, and then chevron again. And so you've basically got chevrons which you put into the compost. We haven't got many streptocarpus, but if anybody wants to give that a go, feel free. So you can either put it in horizontal leaf or with your chevrons. Okay. Like agave americana, and you can see that they produce toes or offsets. Now you can actually pop a bit of polystyrene because these are pretty sharp on the ends. You can do that, but I'm just going to knock that out. And what we're going to do is you can just break into that, and you can cut down through here with a saw or something. If you can't, if it won't separate by hand, you need something. There is some old knives which we can use, and we can see. I don't know how sharp these are, but we'll give it a go. So just cut down, and you can separate, and you've got your little toes. Okay, and you could probably even separate both those as well. And if they break, don't worry, just let them dry off and then put them into the compost and they'll root. Okay, so that's your agave. So, and then obviously you'll re-pop that back up. I'll just pop that back in there. So that's agave propagation. So what we've got here, this is a very poor specimen of a Mexican hat plant. But the good news is, if you look at the base, it's got lots of babies. So this is foliar embryos. So they're producing these little embryos all the way around the leaf. And so we can literally take, we can take them, put them in some compost. We get some little pots, and we can pot them up. And you've got yourself a little Mexican hat plant. Tolmia menzizii, the piggyback plant, does the same thing. It produces foliar little babies on the leaves. But I'll leave that one for now. We'll have a little look at a couple of others. So on the Swiss cheese plant, what I'm going to do with the Swiss cheese, just going to have a look for suitable cutting. It's not in fantastic condition here, but what I'm going to do when I take the cutting is I'm going to make sure that I've got kind of an aerial root, and I want a leaf and a portion of stem. Okay, and I'm just going to cut. I'm going to cut it below that node there. I could cut it below the next one. So I've got a portion of stem, a little aerial root, and I've got the leaf. I'm just going to put a little bit of compost in there, in the bottom. Okay. I'm just going to put. Now you can root these in water like you can with epipremnum, the devil's ivy. So we'll just do that, and I'm just like as if I'm potting it up really. Okay, and I'm just going to do that. So you could do it in water where you can have a piece of cardboard and pop it through, so it's just holding it up from falling into the water. So that's perfectly fine. But what we're going to do is something like that, and that's your cutting there, because you've got your roots, you've got a portion of stem, and you've got that. You could put a little split cane if you're worried about it flopping over. Now with the rubber plants, what you do is you can actually roll the leaf, put an elastic band around it, and again you want a bud and a little portion of stem. So that's your sort of pretty much a leaf bud cutting. To the yuccas we're going to do. Believe it or not, you can be quite brutal with these. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to chop it through with a saw. Okay, so I've got my, there we go. What we want on the yucca, we want a bud. Now if you can't see the bud, there'll be like a little bulgy bit. Okay, you're looking horrified. Now you can see there, for example, that one has come out of that portion. See, there's almost like nodes, and there's your node. So you've got to have a node, and you've got to have a little bulge. So that one, there's another one there. Look, it's going to produce a plant from that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure I've got a node, and I've got, that one's going to be one cutting. So I'm actually going to, I've got to be a bit careful here, that's the flat bit. I'm just going to cut kind of, I'll cut above that node there. So there's a node just, oh, it's actually one, I'll do that one there actually. That one's, it's a clear one. So I'm just using an old saw. I like an old saw. Some people use knives, but I think a saw is actually better. So you can see that I went a little bit lower, so I've got that, and there's the node, and that will produce, put that in the compost, that'll produce a new plant. But also, this, I can get another couple of cuttings out of that. I reckon on this one, there's the node. Okay, there's a bit of a bulgy bit there, so there's a bit of the node there, so that should produce the new plant. I reckon if I cut that through just underneath that node, that I should get 2 new plants. You could do it as one. You might want to leave that and have that as one cutting, okay? But I'm going to cut that through there. Now again, you've got to remember which way up it is. So you've got your 2. If you want to mark them, you could put a mark in them. Some people put a slightly angular cut on the base just to show, because it would be very easy to get this the wrong way up. So there's my cuttings. So again, push that into the compost about there and leave it, and bottom heat, if you've got a bit of bottom heat. Don't need a lot of moisture because again they're from a dry, arid, more areas like that, dry heat rather than wet heat. So that would be my cuttings. That's a Dracinia.
How long would that take to actually start?
If you've got a little bit of bottom heat, I would expect after about 6 to 8 weeks you'd begin to see some sort of shooting. So do you want to do that one? Take care of that. And someone want to take care of that one. There you go. And